Hello, football fans, and welcome to another episode of Football Talk with Jon and Evan. I'm your host, John Justin Jankowski, with Evan Knows His Football Bonner. It is 8:46 p.m., March 12th, 2017. Evan, how are you?
I'm doing good, John. I'm doing real well after the Eagles signed Alshon Jeffery. I'm telling you that much.
Great sports week for me. The Eagles made moves I was happy with, and my Kent State Golden Flashes are going to the NCAA tournament for the first time since 2008. Watch out, UCLA.
You got them going to the Final Four, John?
I mean, 14th seed. Why not? Cinderella, man.
Why not? Shock the world.
But everybody's here for football, so let's talk some football. Huge weekend. Obviously, NFL free agency started this past Thursday. Eagles made a huge splash. They got the best wide receiver in free agency. They signed Alshon Jeffery, a $14 million deal. But that's after incentives. It's a one-year deal. He actually turned down more years with Minnesota. And obviously, Alshon's betting on himself. So, Evan, what I like about Alshon Jeffery is, like I've said this thousands of times when we've been talking about players I want the Eagles to draft or the wide receivers I wanted them to target in free agency, he's that big body receiver that you can throw it up and hook it in the end zone. He'll split the zone defense between the safety and the corner on the outside, get that 50-50 ball. And that's something Alshon Jeffery offers, but the past couple of years, Jeffery's been hurt. He's been suspended. He hasn't had that 1,000-yard season lately. So what was your reaction to the signing?
John, I love this move. I don't think there's any downside to this at all if it doesn't work out, if he's not the player we think he is. They're not on the hook for a long period of time. If he does do well, they should be able to re-sign him next year. A lot of contracts come off the books in 2018. So I think this is a great move for the Philadelphia Eagles, and it's great for Carson Wentz. But the guy who's going to be affected by this the most is probably Zach Ertz. If you remember correctly, John, when Terrell Owens was signed by the Philadelphia Eagles in 2004, that's when you saw L.J. Smith really have the only years of his career, 2004 into 2005, when he was playing like a Pro Bowl tight end. And I expect that out of Zach Ertz as well. I think you'll see everything kind of opening up, and you're going to see Zach Ertz having more space to get open, to find soft spots and zones, and to work on linebackers and safeties and make big plays. So it's huge for him, obviously huge for Carson Wentz, but it's just great for the city of Philadelphia. I think you get your first bona fide number one receiver really since Terrell Owens. You could argue maybe Deshaun Jackson had 1 year like that, same thing with Jeremy Maclin. You've had number one guys who were literally the number one receiver on the team, but they were never purebred number one guys. And I do think that's what Alshon Jeffery is. I think, he's not nearly as injury prone as people like to think he is. And I think he'll be a great addition for the Philadelphia Eagles. And I fully expect him to be here for multiple years.
And if Eagle fans want to get more excited about the Alshon Jeffery move, he wrote a story with the Players Tribune. And in that article, he mentions he thinks Carson Wentz can be an MVP candidate down the line. And that's exciting to hear from a wide receiver. Like, yes, you and me can say he's going to be an MVP candidate down the road. But having a player think that and say that when he used to be an opponent of Carson Wentz, that's very exciting to hear. And one thing I like about Jeffery is the Eagles finally have a player recently that they can put on the outside. Jordan Matthews can't play the outside. He can't do it. Nelson Aguilar has shown he can't do it. Dorial Green-Beckham, he hasn't shown it the past 2 years. But Alshon Jeffery he can be that elite receiver on the outside. And it's exciting to see that happen.
Well, John, I honestly believe that Alshon Jeffery is the best receiver that we've had here since Terrell Owens. And I think it's a lot closer between the two players, Alshon and Terrell, than a lot of people think. They're both 6'3". They're about 220 pounds. They both in their prime, both T.O. and Alshon ran about 4.5s. Alshon actually, at this point in his career, has a higher yards per catch than T.O. did after his fifth year. He was at 15 yards per catch. T.O. was at 14.8. They both only had 2,000-yard receptions in the first 5 years, and both of them were not the number one receivers over their first 5 years. Alshon had Brandon Marshall really being the number one guy, and T.O. had Jerry Rice. So there were actually – no one remembers this now, but there was a time when there were questions whether T.O. was a bona fide elite number one receiver because he had Jerry Rice, and I think that's very similar with Alshon Jeffery. I'm not saying Alshon's nearly as good as T.O. T.O. is a Hall of Famer, clearly. I think Alshon Jeffery, though, is a perennial all-pro, Pro Bowl type guy. Somebody – he just does everything very well, runs – pretty good routes. He's a lot faster than he looks. And, he only had dropped one ball from 92 targets in 2016. So, John, that is a huge change from the amount of drops we have seen over the last 2 years in Philadelphia. And that was reported by Tim McManus. I really, really like Alshon Jeffery. Everyone talks about how he's injury prone. Well, he's only missed 7 games in his entire career due to injury, 7 of 64 games. And that happened all in 2015 after Week 9. He was put on injured reserve. Besides that, the only other 4 games he missed was due to performance-enhancing drugs. Obviously, that's not a great sign, but he's not nearly as injury-prone as people think he is. I think he's young. He's athletic. He's got a number of great years left in him, and I think him and Carson Wentz will get along very well in South Philadelphia for a long time.
And let us know what you think of Alshon Jeffery. Leave a comment in the comment section below. And remember, subscribe, post this video on Facebook, tweet this video out. We're trying to get as many viewers as possible. So share on Facebook, comment on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube, and tweet this out. Other wide receiver the Philadelphia Eagles signed, the first wide receiver they signed, Torrey Smith, $15 million deal for 3 years, but they can cut him after 1 year if they want to. I mean, when you think Torrey Smith, everyone's going to think of the 2013 Ravens run where they won the Super Bowl. He's that deep threat guy that will stretch the safeties, and I think he got a pretty good price at $5 million. I'm fine with $5 million a year for Torrey Smith. I know everyone's going to say he had down year last year in San Francisco, but San Fran was just a terrible offense under Chip Kelly. They had no idea what they were doing down there. And I don't think Torrey Smith's going to go back to those 1,200-yard season he had with Baltimore, but I feel like Torrey Smith can get you 700, 600, maybe 5 touchdowns kind of a season. And with Jordan Matthews in the slot and Ertz at tight end, I really feel like Torrey Smith can turn into a playmaker and a weapon for the Eagles.
Well, Torrey Smith, I think, is a perfect number 2 option in Philadelphia. I think he works great opposite Alshon Jeffery. What I like about this new Eagles wide receiving core is how tall they are. They're all very long, both Alshon and Torrey Smith and Jordan Matthews, all over 6 feet tall. All are the type of guys who can box out and almost play like basketball and go up and get the football. I do have some reservations about Torrey Smith, John. I'm not nearly as excited about him as other people are, and I'm not even sold that he'll be here on the opening day roster. I'm really not. I know he probably will, but I'm not entirely sold on it. John, you said he had a down year last year. That is an egregious understatement. I mean, 20 receptions, 267 yards, 3 touchdowns. But the thing is, John, you can't look at Torrey Smith for his total yards or his receptions, or even really his touchdowns for that matter. There's only one statistic that really encompasses a guy like Torrey Smith's effectiveness on the field, and that's yards per catch. 2 years ago in 2015, he had 20.1 yards per reception. That's very strong. That might have led the NFL. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but that is elite numbers in 2015. Last year, it was 13.4. It went down almost 7 yards per reception. Obviously, there's a lot going on in San Francisco. I understand that situation was honestly a dumpster fire.
Blaine Gabbert and Colin Kaepernick were throwing to him.
But Colin Kaepernick threw to him the year before, and he had 20 yards per reception. I mean, just for me, John, I think there are certain things that I'm a little worried about there. He's always, throughout his career, been around the 15 to 17 yards per catch. That's good. I think he's had 1,000-yard season. The year they went to the Super Bowl in 2012, he had 855 yards per reception and 8 touchdowns. He's no stranger to the end zone. Every year he has multiple touchdown receptions. But again, John, last year he was at his weakest point. Actually, I heard on the radio, Carlin and Reese were talking about how he was ranked, I believe, 119 out of 119 receivers by Pro Football Focus as to effectiveness on the field. So he was the least effective receiver in the NFL last year and dropped 1 out of every 4 balls thrown his way. So am I worried about Torrey Smith? Yeah. Do I think he's more of a name than a player at this point? Yeah. But what I will also say that he isn't on the wrong side of 30. I do think he's got some speed left in him. I think he is faster than his 13.4 yards per reception we saw last year. And I do think he's a clear upgrade over what we had. But to be entirely honest, John, this was the worst wide receiving core I think I'd ever seen in Midnight Green. So it doesn't take much to improve upon that. But I do think Torrey Smith, there's a good chance he'll be effective. I would like to say, assuming he makes the team and 2016 was a fluke for him, I would say he'd have somewhere around, I'll give you 16 yards per reception. I'll say he has a bounce back year. And I don't know how many yards he'll have or targets. I just don't know. I'll tell you what, Alshon Jeffery's going to get a ton of targets. I think Zach Ertz will get a ton of targets. I think Jordan Matthews will get more targets. So I wouldn't be surprised if Torrey Smith had somewhere around 30, 35 catches this year. So he won't be effective in terms of a volume receiver, but I do think he'll stretch the field and add an element we haven't really seen here since Jeremy Maclin left Philadelphia in 2014.
Yeah, that's the number one thing I care about. Do you think he has the ability to push the safeties back?
Yes, I do. I do. I'm not as sold on it as I am with other players, considering how weak he was last year. But I do think in a perfect world, he will be able to push back receivers a little bit, yes.
Well, that's good news, but we're going to switch from wide receiver to offensive line. We're going to talk a little bit about Chance Warmack. Eagles signed him, used to be with the Titans. Now, I'll tell you about Chance Warmack. When the Titans drafted him 10th overall a couple of years ago, he was the offensive lineman you couldn't miss. He was the guaranteed guy that was going to turn into a star. Other players, there was a lot of upside. It was like taking a chance. But Chance Warmack was like the guaranteed he was going to develop into a star player. But it turns out Warmack, he hasn't been bad. He's been average, but he hasn't reached that 10th overall pick potential Titan fans were hoping for. He's a guard, so Eagles obviously adding more depth to their offensive line, and we've seen a very battered offensive line the past couple of years. But I like this sign because I think it's a one-year deal. You're seeing, like Alshon Jeffery, I think Chance is gambling on himself. And he used to be a 10th overall pick. I think there's that potential he can turn into that star player, and it just wasn't working out for him in Tennessee. So, Evan, what do you think of the Chance Warmack signing?
Well, the thing about Chance Warmack is it's a very low-risk, high-reward signing. I do like it. I love the fact that he is reunited with former Alabama offensive line coach Jeff Stoutland. That's really the only reason he's here. Now, he has claimed that he had other options on the table, multi-year deals, but he feels that working with Jeff Stoutland, coming to Philadelphia, will give him an opportunity to resurrect his career. Now, it's only a one-year deal. I believe it's $1.15 million. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's around there, his deal. When I first saw this signing, John, I really didn't consider this to be anything more than a depth move. I understand that he was a blue-chip recruit coming out of college. Obviously, he's a 10th overall guy. He has to have the physical upside, and that hasn't gone away. He has started every game that he played in Tennessee, but there's a reason they didn't pick up his fifth-year option, and it's really consistency. I know he came on slowly his rookie year, and by the end of his rookie year was playing pretty well, and unfortunately things kind of got worse year in and year out after that for the next 3 seasons for Chance. I like this. Again, it's very similar to the Alshon Jeffery move where if he reaches his potential and he is what we think he could be, then you have an elite left guard maybe for the next 5 to 10 years. If it doesn't work out, you don't have to cut him. You just don't re-sign him. And, his contract leaves the book. So there's really not a lot of downside. There were some things I was kind of interested here, John, though, about Chance Warmack. He's not very position versatile. And with the Philadelphia Eagles, at least their interior linemen, for the last number of years, all of their guards can usually also play tackle or center. Chance Warmack is strictly a left guard in the NFL. So there's not a lot of versatility there. So, it's not like Alan Barber who can step out and play tackle, or Matt Tobin. Ivik Isaac-Simalalu can play both center and tackle from time to time. So Steven Wisniewski's another one who can play center and guard. So Chance Warmack's the only really guy on this interior offensive line that lacks position versatility. I am a little worried about that. In my mind, that kind of means this might be a boom or bust. Either he starts or he's not on the roster come opening day. I don't know if that is the case, but his lack of versatility makes it difficult for him to be a backup. But he clearly has all the physical tools. I think him being reunited with Stoutland can't hurt him at all. And I think left guard was a kind of an I guess it was an underlooked position of need for the Eagles to a degree. You look at the rest of the offensive line, and once you brought back Jason Peters, you knew he was going to be your left tackle. You know Lane Johnson's going to be your right tackle. You know Brandon Brooks is going to be your right guard. And as long as Jason Kelsey's on the roster, he's going to be your center. The only question was does Isaac-Simalalu step into that left guard spot? Do you bring back Steven Wisniewski to do it? Or do you keep Alan Barber there? Now, with Chance Warmack at left guard, there's a good chance it will be him, at least on opening day, and those other guys will be a little bit more versatile backup guys. So who knows what happens? I thought these offensive line moves this week were very interesting and very puzzling, to be entirely honest with you. But I went the long way around the barn, John, to tell you that there's really – I don't know what I think about Chance Warmack, whether he'll be a starter, be the 10th overall pick that we all thought he could be. But I'll tell you right now, if he isn't, you cut him, you move on, no skin off our back. So I do like this move.
Now, with the Eagles, obviously, like you said, are kind of deep at O-line right now, which isn't a bad thing. But it is a little puzzling. Like, I thought Jason Kelsey would have been dealt already, but he hasn't been traded. His contract's on the books, so –
Well, John, just stop.
To
answer your question about Jason Kelsey, John, to use a Sam Hinkie Philadelphia 76ers term, I think it's about assets with him. I think obviously, John, it doesn't take the biggest Philadelphia Eagles fan to know that he has struggled in recent years. I'm not a Jason Kelsey fan. John, we've been talking about what kind of offensive lineman we like since the beginning of time, and I just like bigger offensive linemen. I think, I would rather have Jamal Jackson in his prime over Jason Kelsey in his prime. Jamal Jackson was never a Pro Bowler. Jason Kelsey was. I'd rather have Bubba Franks in his prime, and I would rather have I'm blanking on his name. Who was the center when the Eagles went to the Super Bowl? Hank Fraley.
Yeah, Fraley.
Hank Fraley. I like Hank Fraley better than him, too, because they were bigger, stronger, stouter centers. Jason Kelsey's good when pulling, but he certainly doesn't have the physical beef, especially against a 3-4 front. Against a nose guard, he really struggles. Now, against a 4-3 front, at least in those sub packages, when he's more of a help out guy, he'll double down on an interior defensive tackle, and it's not really on him to pick up somebody like he would against a 3-4 and a nose guard. He's not nearly as bad, but he does get pushed back. I don't like Jason Kelsey, but it's difficult to get rid of him right now. I know that his contract makes it a little bit more they're more comfortable.
Now, when you point that out, with that depth, do you think he becomes a partial starter? 3-4 defenses, Simalalu starts, and 4-3 defenses.
The thing is the center position is the most important position on the offensive line, John. And I think you know this, but for our audience members who don't, the offensive line or the center is the one who gives out the calls, the protection calls, at least when they have to audible and make adjustments on the offensive line pre-snap. And to take out a center from game to game, John, is like taking out a quarterback game to game or a middle linebacker on defense from game to game who's going to make the calls, make the adjustments on the fly, really be that emotional leader. It usually is the center. and that has been Jason Kelce. Now, John, I'm not defending him. I thought he did get a little better as the season went on, but I don't think he played at a Pro Bowl level last year. I don't even think he was a Pro Bowl reserve. I just think he got in based on name and name alone. But to bring my argument full circle, John, the reason why they haven't dealt him yet is I think the Philadelphia Eagles are looking at the name Jason Kelce, and they're saying this is a multiple-time Pro Bowler. This is a guy who's been on our offensive line since 2012. Every game he's played in, he's been a starter. We're going to designate a certain value on this asset, again, like a Sam Hinkie term, and we're not going to move him unless we get this asset. It's the same idea, the reason why Jahlil Okafor is on the court for the Philadelphia 76ers, even though I think we can both agree, John, that Rashawn Holmes is probably the better center for what the 76ers are doing. They keep marching Jahlil Okafor out there, and I'm just a little worried about the Philadelphia Eagles, where they're going to say, you know what, we're not going to cut Jason Kelce. Again, I think that's more of a contract reason why they won't cut him, and they're not going to trade him for like a conditional 6th-round pick. I think they're going to see him, and they're going to want nothing less than a 4th-round pick for him. And I don't think, based on the film that he's put, or the play that he's put on tape, I don't think other team scouting departments are going to look at him and value him, but with a 4th-round grade in terms of what they would trade him for. And I think, long story short, John, I think that's the reason why he ends up back in midnight green, and I do think he'll end up starting. Although I prefer Steven Wisniewski and preferably Isaac Simalalu at the center position this year. I just have this gut feeling that it'll be Jason Kelce on opening day.
Now, like you said, the center is very important. He runs the offensive line. When do you have to make a call? Okay, it's going to be Simalalu. It's going to be Jason Kelce. Like, when is it too late to make a move to trade Kelce because you're already too close to opening day?
I think it's already too late, John. I mean, what I mean by that is, well, are you asking me like when would
so you're saying if they move Kelce at the draft, that's too late for Simalalu to become the center of the team?
No, it isn't. No, it isn't.
That's what I'm asking. When is it too late to trade Jason Kelce, in your opinion?
You're saying in terms of, who could step in and be that leader and make that calls and have like a seamless transition? Or are you saying, okay, so you mean from a purely football standpoint? Okay, I get you. Yes. I would say midway through camp. You have plenty of time. Isaac Simalalu knows all the calls. He practices all the calls. I just think it would be much more of you'd want to get him in situations where he would scrimmage and practice with the first team in live action situations. Again,
so midway through camp, for some of our viewers that don't know the calendar off the top of their head, would that be like late August?
No, that's mid-August. That should be around the second.
Okay, so like August 18th, he's still around. That's when you're like, okay, you got to stick with
Kelce.
Kelce.
Only goes into the 3rd preseason game. They break camp before the 4th one. Generally speaking, sometimes it's earlier, sometimes it's later, but it's not like camp is all throughout preseason. They will break camp and have regular practices while they're still in preseason. So when I say midway through camp, I think if they haven't made that call by the 2nd preseason game, then you're going to see Jason Kelce be the number 1 guy. I actually, funny enough, John, I've had this argument with a number of my good buddies this week about Jason Kelce, and their argument was, clearly Jason hasn't been effective. If Isaac Simalalu is the better center, there's no way that they would keep Jason Kelce on the field if Isaac Simalalu is the better player. I don't disagree with that, but I do think that they're going to look at this and they're going to say he has experience, he's been the center here, he's under contract making significant amount of money, and they're almost going to invent reasons why he's better, even though at the end of the day he struggles in one-on-one pass protection and he lacks the size. And really, he's been starting off slowly in the last couple of years. He did come on later on in the year this year and played okay, but he just isn't there physically. But I just have this feeling when you put it all together, I don't want to call it politics because we're not, this isn't like a high school recruiting basketball team where politics play in. This is the NFL. I understand that. But when you mix in experience, you mix in the name, you mix in the contract, and you mix in his leadership and ability to make calls on the offensive line, I just think if they don't get that 4th-round pick before the draft, I just have this gut feeling like Jason Kelce will be your starting center. I don't want him to be. I'd much, much, much rather have Isaac Simalalu there. He's just bigger and stronger. Same with Steven Wisniewski. I just feel like it'll end up being Jason Kelce.
Now we're going to switch to linebackers. The Eagles kept a Najee Good, and Michael Kendricks didn't get dealt. So right now the Eagles at linebackers are Nigel Bradham, Jordan Hicks, obviously the two best linebackers the Eagles got. Then they got Najee Good and Michael Kendricks. Now, usually you say, okay, the Eagles play a 4-3, so you want three linebackers that are quality. But as we saw last season, the Eagles not rarely, but more times than not, they did not play three linebackers. They played a 4-2-5, 4 linemen, 2 linebackers, and 5 players in the secondary. So is Kendricks going to be around by the second preseason game?
He won't be.
Are you happy with?
He won't be around after June 1st. Excuse me. His contract is set up that even though you have to pay him right now a roster bonus for being around, you can cut him and release more and get more money back to your salary cap after June 1st. I firmly believe that if they do not find a trade partner for him, that they will release him after June 1st. John, the reason why the Eagles were in their 4-2-5 defensive system, or basically nickel package, as often as they were, John, is the way the NFL works nowadays. Most teams, not just the Eagles, most teams will spend over 50% of the time in their nickel sub package. That means they are taking out a linebacker or a defensive lineman. For the Eagles, it is a linebacker, and they will put an extra corner on the field to just match up against the opposing team's offensive sets. They'll put, if the other team's going to march out 3 corners, you can't really cover that with 3 linebackers on the field, at least not all that effectively with consistency. So the Eagles are like most NFL teams where they'll take out a linebacker in their nickel sub package. It just so happens that Michael Kendricks, you'd think at his size and athleticism that he'd be a very good cover guy, and he was early on in his career. But Nigel Bradham was stellar in coverage last year. I thought he did a great job against tight ends, and that's kind of also what Jordan Hicks does very well. So Michael Kendricks is kind of the odd man out. His contract that he signed, that was just another example of Chip Kelly making mistakes as a front office general manager. I do expect him to be released, and I think that
well, it's tough to blame Chip on that one because Kendricks had an excellent year in Chip's first year as the Eagles head coach.
I think he's a better.
Everyone kept saying Kendricks was the better draft pick than Fletcher Cox.
Yeah, I think he's a fine 3-4 inside linebacker. I don't know how I feel about him in the will linebacker situation where the Eagles have him now. Nigel Bradham's more of a Sam or a strong side linebacker. I don't know how I feel about Michael.
But, I mean, I understand why Chip made that move. I understand it.
Well, in the long run, it's just another example of a move that didn't work out. Whether we understand it or we didn't at the time. I mean, everyone understood Nnamdi Asomugha when he was signed here, but no one's going to sit here now and say it's tough to blame Howie Roseman for signing him. In fact, he's justified for that move. So I know hindsight is 20/20, and it's easy to look now and say this was a poor move, but clearly they have to figure out a way to get out from underneath the Michael Kendricks contract. They just need to open up money. They are still over the cap, but they have until June 1st to get back under the cap. They won't be making any more, cap moves just to open up cap to get back under the cap until after the draft, I think.
Now, we're going to talk about the rest of the NFC East. Obviously, the Eagles every year, they play the Giants twice. They play the Cowboys twice. They play the Redskins twice. Giants, they went out and got Brandon Marshall. They replaced Victor Cruz. I mean, that's a pretty scary wide receiver set you got in New York right now. You got Odell Beckham, Sterling Shepard, and Brandon Marshall. That secondaries better be ready. Then the Cowboys, Tony Romo, he's off the team. He's on the team. He's off the team. He's on the team. I mean, Tony Romo is not going to be a Cowboy when the season starts. He'll end up somewhere. And then the Redskins, they lost Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garçon, but they took a contract like Alshon Jeffery, and they signed Terrell Pryor to a 1-year, $8 million deal. He's betting on himself, Terrell Pryor, 1,000 yards with no quarterbacks in Cleveland last year. So what did you think of the moves by the teams in the NFC East?
Well, John, I thought they were interesting. The biggest move, John, is the one you didn't bring up. Dallas Cowboys right tackle Doug Free retired today after 10 years in the NFL. I think that's very big. But to go over the guys that we did discuss, John, I thought the Brandon Marshall signing is a good signing, but I don't think it's as good as people make it out to be. There is only one football. I think Odell Beckham Jr. is still the bona fide number one receiver up there. And I think Brandon Marshall, if anything, could become a distraction because he's a high-volume receiver. He just is. And I don't see him getting as many receptions in New York. In my opinion, the only reason why he signed with the New York Giants is so he could stay in New York for his inside the NFL after playing career. You know, he's a reporter. He does all that stuff. I think that's the reason why he signed with the Giants. I think he was just desperate to stay in the New York area for his TV show. So that, I think it could go real well. I think, John, if you and I were putting together a Madden team, a John Madden football team, the video game, I think that would be a great wide receiving core. I'm a little more worried about, how it'll all come together, if you will, because Odell Beckham Jr. never really played with Victor Cruz on the field at the same time, at least not when Odell Beckham Jr. turned into Odell Beckham Jr. that we know. And Sterling Shepard is, in my opinion, a great young slot receiver. And I just look at Brandon Marshall at this point in his career. I know he's 2 years removed from a great season, but numbers-wise, he'll never sniff 1,500 yards, 11 touchdowns again because, again, Odell Beckham Jr. is going to be getting a number of those receptions. I see him more as a red zone threat, a 10-plus touchdown guy for sure. But if you're asking me, are they all going to put up video game numbers, dominate the NFL, and win the NFC East outright? I'm not sold. I think it could just as easily go south as it does look really good. But again, to the average fan, I know why you would look at just a big name signing and say, man, what could go wrong here? Well, the truth is a lot could go wrong. Switching teams, the Terrell Pryor signing in Washington, I thought was a pretty good move. Obviously, they did lose two very strong receivers. Deshaun is now in Tampa. Pierre Garçon signed with the San Francisco 49ers. The contract, 1 year, $8 million. I thought it was exactly what – I was surprised that Alshon Jeffery got a 1 year prove-it deal because in my mind he's an established number one receiver. Terrell Pryor doesn't surprise me at all because he's really only been playing receiver for the last 2 seasons. So that doesn't surprise me. The argument is with you look at Alshon Jeffery's contract, you look at Terrell Pryor's contract, who would you rather have in Philadelphia? I think obviously Alshon Jeffery because he only signed a one. Everyone's talking about $14 million. It's really $9.5 million for Alshon Jeffery with $4.5 million in incentives. He would only actually make $14 million if he made the Pro Bowl. So it's actually only $1.5 million more to sign Alshon Jeffery in Philadelphia than it was to sign Terrell Pryor in Washington. And John, I think you can agree with me that you look at, would you take Alshon Jeffery for $1.5 more million than Terrell Pryor?
Oh, no doubt.
So it's a nice move, but again, Terrell Pryor hasn't been doing it that long, and now he's not going to have any help really on the outside in Washington. So I'm a little worried about that. And then obviously with the Dallas Cowboys to switch over there, they will not find a trading partner for Tony Romo. Teams won't trade him for the same reason why a lot of teams don't trade for guys clearly on the trading block, if you will. The reason why nobody traded for Connor Barwin. Why would you trade for somebody if you can sign him and give up nothing when you know that a team's going to have to cut him? And I think that's the same thing. That's what's going on in Dallas. It's not like teams aren't interested in Tony. They're just saying, why would we risk giving up an asset, a mid-round pick, to a team if we can just sign him when he becomes available? So, but that being said, the big news in Dallas is the retirement of Doug Free because he was a very strong right tackle. And he's actually the second starting offensive lineman in Dallas to leave this year or in this free agency period. Number 65, I'll be entirely honest with you. He replaced Lael Collins. His name is escaping me at the moment, but he did sign a big free agent deal a few days ago. So the Dallas Cowboys offensive line doesn't look nearly as intimidating as it did only a few days before. So in my opinion, that might be the biggest news is what's going on with the Dallas offensive line.
And the thing is, the Dallas offensive line did you mean Ronald Leary?
Yes, Ronald Leary. Yes, John. He came in. He was an undrafted guy. He came in for Lael Collins once he got injured. Lael was obviously the big name tackle out of LSU who ended up on Dallas for off-the-field reasons. He wasn't drafted. We won't get into that here, but I do think La'el Collins will probably move out to right tackle. He was a tackle at LSU, and they're going to have to make a decision and find I don't know if they'll go through the draft or they'll find a nice left guard in free agency. I don't even know who's available right now, but they're going to have to figure that out because a lot of what they do in Dallas is based upon not just having a good offensive line. It was about having the best offensive line maybe ever. And I think that's why Dak Prescott played as well as he did. And I'm certainly telling you that's why Ezekiel Elliott looked like a Superman, is because the offensive line, the holes in that running game that were created for Ezekiel Elliott were ridiculous. He wasn't touched often until he was 4, 5, 6 yards down the field. Then it's easy to hurdle guys and make all these plays if you're not getting touched for yards on end.
Now, one player we're going to be seeing twice a year that Eagle fans don't miss at all, Nolan Carroll signed with the Cowboys. So I thought it was kind of funny. We saw Cowboy wide receivers just torch Nolan Carroll the past couple of years, and then they sign him.
Well, John, I think it's funny. I can't stand Nolan Carroll. And sorry, Jack. I know my buddy Jack really likes Nolan, but I don't like him. I thought he lacked hip fluidity. I think he lacks elite speed. He is a solid tackler. He can make plays on the football from time to time. He's a physical player, uses his hands well, but he just doesn't have that elite NFL athleticism, where in my mind he's anything more than a spot starter to a depth guy on teams that even have average NFL corners. So in my mind, it just opens up a spot for the Philadelphia Eagles to go out and get another young corner and develop along with the guys like Jalen Mills.
And listeners and viewers, comment in the comment section below who made the best free agent move so far in the NFC East. We want to hear from you. And remember, share this video on Facebook, tweet out this video, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're trying to grow this channel every day. We're growing in numbers. We had more viewers in our video last week than we did in previous weeks. So thank you so much for tuning in every week and listening to our opinions. And we're going to switch the play called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. First tuning in, Evan names me a player, and I got to say a good moment, a bad moment, and an ugly moment with that player. And then we turn it right around and we do it the other way. So, Evan, a player I'm going to give you. I know we said that
I want
they have to play at least 2 years.
I just want you to challenge me. Give me a name that makes it tough, because you keep saying you're going to give me these.
Michael Carter-Williams, I'll throw at you.
Michael Carter-Williams. Oh, well, obviously the good is he was a Philadelphia 76er a couple years ago. He kind of was one of the guys that started the process, if you will. The good with him is he was a Rookie of the Year. And I believe it was 2013, 2014 season. He was traded after the next year. And I believe that the Philadelphia 76ers got a top 3 protected pick for him, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Lakers pick. They got the first round Lakers pick.
That's the good, is that you eventually flip this guy into a top first round pick. I think the bad with him is he really couldn't shoot. And I know that
he's an awful shooter.
The 76ers almost played faster and more and kind of played his style of game up, because I do think that they were always trying to trade him. So the bad with him is, his inability to shoot. In my opinion, his ugly is, you know what, John? I'm going to say that the hype with him is what was ugly. A lot of Philadelphia 76ers fans really thought that they were going to build around Michael Carter-Williams. And they were selling tickets and they were selling shirts at the stadium with his face on it, like Rookie of the Year. My brother bought one. He still has it. So in my mind, I do think it was a little dishonest for them to kind of mark up this player like, this is the future of our team. This is the NBA Rookie of the Year. We're going to build with him and Nerlens Noel for the next 10-plus years. And now neither of them are on the roster. So in my mind, I thought that was a little unfair and a little dishonest to the fan base. And I thought it was the first instance of that dishonesty since Josh Harris has kind of come back and bought this team. So, or bought the team. So in my mind, it kind of started the dishonesty in the process that we're seeing now with, Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. So the good is his rookie of the year, and I think the super good, if you will, is flipping him for a top 3 protected pick. The bad is he was an awful shooter, and the ugly is the dishonest way in which the 76ers marketed him to the fan base. So, John, now to flip it back on you.
I just want to throw in my Michael Carter-Williams. I'll never forget that triple-double he had in his opening game against the Miami Heat. And the 76ers beat LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh in Michael Carter's Williams debut. So that's one thing I'll never forget about him. I'm not saying that would be like my good, but I'll just never forget that moment.
Okay, John. So now I'm going to flip this back on you, okay? You give me the good and the bad, and the ugly for Michael Lewis.
Michael Lewis, wow. He was actually one of my favorite safeties the Eagles have had. He was one of my favorite players in that Eagles Super Bowl run. And I think the good is obviously the Eagles secondary when they when they went to the Super Bowl. That is obviously the good because you had at that time Lito Shepherd, Sheldon Brown, Brian Dawkins, and Michael Lewis. That was one of the best secondaries the Eagles had since we've been following them since the 2000 era. I think the bad was you didn't really hear much of Michael Lewis after that season.
Yeah.
Like, I thought he was going to become the guy. I was hoping, okay, this is going to be the future Pro Bowl safety that was going to be a future leader for the Eagles, and he just kind of fell off the face of the earth.
That is true.
And the ugly was just, I know it wasn't entirely his fault, but I still won't forget Deion Branch just catching 13 balls or whatever it was in the second half against the Eagles. That I know it wasn't all his fault. I know the whole secondary played a part in that. I know Dawkins and Shepherd, and they're all to blame, but I was really hoping Michael Lewis was going to turn into a Pro Bowler, and he just kind of fell off the face of the earth.
Yeah, John, mine for Michael Lewis, in my opinion, the good was his physicality. This was a physical, old school.
He hit so hard.
Strong safety. You don't see strong safeties like him in the NFL anymore. He was a very similar guy to like a TJ Ward or a Dante Whitner, where he was a physical guy first, a cover guy second. You put him in the box a lot. He was great on run support. My favorite Michael Lewis moment ever is, you remember when T.O. came back with the Eagles and he was going to try, I believe it was Drew Bledsoe was the quarterback at the time, threw him a ball, his first game back. Michael Lewis came charging in and T.O. flinched and kind of dropped the ball. So Michael Lewis definitely had that kind of physicality where even somebody like T.O., who was equally as physical as of a wide receiver, kind of respected him to a point where he backed down a little bit. So I thought that was the good for him. The bad, in my opinion, was I thought the weight of expectation is what ultimately did Michael Lewis in. Now, on the field, what did Michael Lewis in was he really struggled to cover deep. I think particularly as Brian Dawkins got older, you saw it more with Michael Lewis because Brian Dawkins, even though he was listed as a free safety throughout his career, really after 2003, he played much more of a strong safety role. As his physical skills diminished, he almost became more of a fourth linebacker. And when they would ask Michael Lewis to kind of take that deep thirds safety spot in zone coverage, in a cover 3 or just a cover 2 or just playing back and being an athlete in space, Michael Lewis struggled to do that. So, which brings me to my ugly with Michael Lewis of, we got benched for, John? Sean Considine.
Oh, Sean Considine. We don't want to hear that name.
Sean Considine. He played so badly at the end, Michael Lewis, that he was actually he made Sean Considine look like a starting safety for Jim Johnson's eyes. And Sean Considine, I mean, he's built like us, John. He had no business in the NFL. He just physically wasn't. No. I mean, could cover fine, but just couldn't tackle, couldn't be physical. And so in my mind, if you lose your starting job, if you go from a Pro Bowl strong safety, somebody that the fans love, that the team is going to build around in the future, to all of a sudden getting benched for Sean Considine in like a 3-year span, that is bad in my opinion. So good and bad, the ugly, Michael Lewis.
All right, we're going to play that game, one more round of that game later on, but we're going to switch to NFL draft prospects every week. Me and Evan look over 5 NFL draft prospects. We've been doing it for at least is going to be our 7th week doing it. Wide receiver we're going to talk about is Corey Davis out of Western Michigan. Now, before the Eagles made these moves, this was easily the consensus pick of mock drafts where the Eagles were going to pick at 14. They were going to take Corey Davis. A lot of mock drafts had. Now, there's a chance the Eagles can take a wide receiver because, like we said earlier, Alshon's a 1-year deal. Torrey Smith may never pan out, and Jordan Matthews' contract is ending, and he has been the talk of trade talks, and Doyle Green Beckham may not even make it to camp. So it's not a guarantee the Eagles won't take a wide receiver in the first round. So we're still going to talk about high-profile wide receivers in this draft, just in the off chance they do draft one. But Corey Davis, first-round talent, 6'2", 205 pounds. One thing that stood out to me when I'm watching him is he concentrates on the ball so well. He's that end zone wide receiver that gets up and goes up and gets it. He does have a little bit of breakaway speed, but remember, he had breakaway speed in the Mid-American Conference, not the best competition in the world. He makes great adjustments on the ball. That's one thing that really stood out to me. And he comes back to the ball. If a wide receiver is if a quarterback's if Wentz will create time for him, he will get open and come back to Wentz. And he's not the biggest 6'2" wide receiver, and he's not the fastest either. But I love the concentration he has on the ball. I love the adjustments he makes. I love how he goes up and gets 50-50 balls. And I just love how he'll come back to the ball as well.
Yeah, John, it's funny. You and I were talking midweek before the Eagles signed Alshon Jeffery, and we were discussing who we like the best out of free agent or out of the draft in terms of these first-round wide receivers, be it Mike Williams, John Ross, or Corey Davis. And, John, if you remember, I told you that Corey Davis was by far the best wide receiver. And what I mean by that is, first of all, it's more important to me that he played in a pro-style offense that he did than the fact that he played in 1AA. So I kind of really like
No. Don't call the MAC 1AA. Do not call the Mid-American Conference 1AA.
It might not be 1AA, but it's 1AA. I mean, let's be honest, John, in terms of the athletes they're getting, the recruits they're getting, the speed of the game. John, I watched that.
Non-Power 5, that's what we like to hear.
It might not be a 1AA team like Villanova is or University of Massachusetts, but in terms of the guys that they're getting and with recruits and the coaches and the speed of the game, it certainly is a 1AA school. Corey Davis, though, he's my favorite guy. I love he runs all the routes very well. He has very good burst and acceleration in the open field. I think he's a kind of guy who can, do very well yards after catch, rack yards. I think much more so than Mike Williams, who I think will get drafted before him. He doesn't have quite the catch radius that Mike Williams has, but is certainly an elite NFL athlete. There were times with him that I didn't see him attack the football at its highest point, which does bother me to a degree, but he does have the ability to catch footballs with his hands and not his body. I think he has a very solid route tree. And, John, I've heard this comparison with him with other guys. I kind of scoffed at it until I went back and started watching a lot of his film. And Corey Davis really does remind me of Terrell Owens. He really uses his size. He's much more athletic and explosive than he looks. Did not play at a great football college. Obviously,
he's a lot lighter than Terrell Owens.
Yeah, he is a lot lighter. But that being said, Terrell Owens had years and years of an NFL weight training program to put muscle on. Terrell Owens played at Tennessee, Chattanooga. Corey Davis at Western Michigan. Neither are exactly football powerhouses. I know Western Michigan had a good year last year, but historically they're not getting those types of recruits year in and year out, those blue chip top guys. My reservations with him include, like I said, doesn't always attack the football at its highest point. But my other big one, John, is if you watch his highlight tapes on YouTube, and I do some of that as well, it almost looks like you're watching a high school highlight tape. And what I mean by that is this is clearly a top elite NFL athlete going against a bunch of MAC kids who aren't even good enough to play in the arena leagues. And you can just tell that the way he's just running to go by guys, with ease and, just making it look, easy at times. And so I am a little worried about that because I do think he looks a little bit better than he really is. I'd be interested to see what this guy would look like if he played at Auburn, for example, or something like that. But I do really believe that he was an NFL receiver at the end of the day. I believe that he's the best wide receiver in this group, and I really like his ability to make plays after he catches the football. He can create separation between him and the man covering after he catches the ball with his acceleration and his agility. So I really like Corey Davis. I don't think there's any chance in heck, to be entirely honest with you, John, that the Eagles draft a wide receiver in the first round now. But I really do like him, and if they did draft him, I wouldn't be against it. Like you said, like Torrey Smith, I might not be around. Alshon Jeffery only signed a one-year deal. You don't know what's going to happen with Jordan Matthews. But you spent all this time, addressing your issues at receiver and free agency. In my mind, they have to go to the defensive end side of the football if Dalvin Cook is not available at 14.
Now, I just want to calm Eagle fans a little bit just about Corey Davis. Evan, who is the best wide receiver on the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Antonio Brown.
What school did he go to?
Didn't he go to – he's a 1AA guy. Didn't he go to Ball State?
No. Stop calling the MAC 1AA. He went to Central Michigan.
He went to Central Michigan. That's right. Man, you put me on the spot there, John. But he's different. Antonio Brown's different. He wasn't he not even a wide receiver in college? He was.
No, he was. He was just a fifth-round pick.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, excuse me.
Yeah, but remember, Evan, I'm going to get you to believe in Maction, man. Maction.
Oh, man, John, come on. Yeah, I went to
college football.
I went to Temple, which isn't exactly, the American.
They were in the MAC. Temple was in the MAC.
I know. I'm actually kind of embarrassed of Temple athletics, to be entirely honest with you, John. The American Conference is kind of a new age made-up conference for a bunch of football teams that can't find homes anywhere else. I agree with you with that. And it's not exactly a vaunted conference by any means. But
Temple never even won the MAC when they were in the MAC.
But Temple also was just on College Game Day a year before. Was a top team the last couple of years. They play schools like Notre Dame and Penn State. John, who's the last big game that Kent State football has won? You have to go back.
Kent State beat a ranked Rutgers, who was ranked 15th in the country 4 years ago. And remember, Kent State was an overtime away in the MAC championship against Northern Illinois from going to the Orange Bowl. So Kent State was a horrible reverse play away from going to the Orange Bowl. That was the last big game Kent State had and big win Kent State had.
John, right now, you could start on a football team in the MAC.
This is my new goal of the podcast, is to make you respect Maction, man. I'm going to get you a T-shirt that says Maction.
John, I want to see John Jankowski playing for Kent State. You can roll back in Kent State. You're living in Cleveland now. You're in Ohio. Go back to Kent State. Go join the football team, and I'll do the show by myself, and we'll do like John Jankowski watch of John just getting running for 2,000 yards a year in the MAC, because that's how little respect I have for the MAC conference. John, who was an all-star for TE middle school football, could dominate in the MAC.
All right. Since we talked about two wide receivers, we're going to talk about two guards, and we'll finish it out with another wide receiver, but we're going to play everyone's favorite game, the good, bad, and the ugly. Evan, you have me go first, so you throw a player my way.
All right, John, you know what? I'm going to let you I have a couple of names in mind. I want you to tell me, do you want to talk about the Phillies or the 76ers?
Oh, Phillies.
All right, John, give me Billy Wagner.
Billy Wagner, the good, obviously, was when he hit 100 miles per hour when he was pitching. That got the crowd so hyped. Every time he threw 100 miles per hour, the crowd went crazy. We both been to Citizens Bank Park when he did it, and that was just an electric atmosphere. One of the best sporting moments as a Philadelphia sports fan, just watching him hit 100 mile per hour. Now, I think this is kind of like the Michael Lewis thing we mentioned earlier, the hype. He hit 100 miles per hour on the gun, so everyone's like, yeah, he's going to be the elite closer. And when he wasn't the elite closer, fans turned on him. And he just didn't have the control. Obviously, when you're throwing 100 miles per hour, it's tough to have control. A lot of guys, I mean, that's a stellar baseball player if you can throw 100 miles per hour and have control. But he had a lot of walks in his career. So obviously, anytime he hit 100 miles per hour, that was the good. The bad was everyone got so excited about him because he was exciting to watch. And there was T-shirts that said Billy the Kid and all that stuff. And there was so much hype around Billy Wagner because he was so much fun to watch. He just never turned into that elite closer. But do you remember? I mean, you're not really the biggest baseball guy. So what did you think of Billy Wagner?
You know what, John? I'm not going to try to embarrass myself and tell you the good, the bad, the ugly for Billy Wagner. So I'll just let you go with that, John. I don't remember too much about him. I remember he threw the ball really hard, and I remember he played for the Mets after the Phillies. That's really all I really remember about Billy Wagner. So
that is ugly. I mean, anything with the Mets is ugly.
Yeah. So John, can you please challenge me here?
I don't want to challenge you because there's so many – we've talked about sports for all our friendship, and there's just so many players I know you're excited about that no one else is excited about. Like, one player I'm going to mention, a lot of Eagle fans can't stand it. Eagle fans point out his negativity all the time, but you love him. You probably even know who I'm going to say before I even say the name. And this is Eagles nickel corner who turned into a starter for the Green Bay Packers, Al Harris.
Is that the good, the bad, and the ugly? Is that who you want me to do?
Yep, good, bad, and the ugly, Al Harris.
Al Harris was awesome. He was awesome. The good for Al Harris was his physicality, long and physical. He played nickel here. He moved to the outside of Green Bay. He had versatility, obviously, in that respects. Loved the dreadlocks, too. So he was cool. But again, he was a part of those secondaries that had Troy Vincent in his prime, Bobby Taylor in his prime. And he was the nickel guy. He was eventually traded for, I think, a conditional third-round pick when the Eagles changed stadiums from Veteran Stadium over to the Link. So it was around 2003 that he got traded. The bad in my mind is that, the Eagles never really replaced him. Everybody talks about how good of a combination Lito Shepherd and Sheldon Brown was, but the truth be told, John, I think Al Harris had a much better and longer career with the Green Bay Packers as a starting outside guy than Lito Shepherd did in Philadelphia. I think Lito had a few years that were better than Al Harris ever had, but when Lito Shepherd fell off, he fell off hard. So I really do think that the Eagles would have been much better off with Al Harris and Sheldon Brown on the outside. They would have been much more physical, and they would have had both of them for a long period of time than having Lito Shepherd, having him fall off like he did, and eventually needing to replace him with Asante Samuel like they did in 2008. So that the good is the fact that he was an effective corner. The bad was that, they really shouldn't have traded him, in my opinion. And the ugly is, and this is a big thing about Al Harris, is he really was Mr. Pass Interference in Philadelphia.
Yep, that's what we all remember, the yellow flags.
To be entirely honest with you, John, it was young in his career. He was grabby, a little too physical. But the thing is, John, he was ahead of his time doing that. What's secondary in the NFL right now? Do you know who I'm going to say, John? The NFL defensive secondary that holds on every play, and their whole thing is the refs aren't going to call it every time.
Oh, Richard Sherman.
Oh, it's Richard Sherman, the Seattle Seahawks, and Al Harris. Yeah, Richard Sherman. Al Harris was doing that 13 years ago. So, it was ugly to see that hanky on the field all the time, and it didn't help the Eagles, but it also came with a physical mentality of I'm not going to get beat that Al Harris had that the rest of the Eagles didn't have nearly as much. I love Sheldon Brown, but I never really liked Lito Shepherd. I think Al Harris would have been a much better outside corner over the long haul, and I think he probably would have been a better nickel than Roderick Hood was, who actually replaced him as the nickel in 2004. So,
we're going to talk about three more players that the Eagles may draft. We're going to talk it's kind of a moot point. I made this list 7 weeks ago, and the Eagles have a plethora of guards, but we game planned this before the Eagles made the moves. Dorian Johnson, offensive guard, 6'5", 300. We're not going to spend too much time on these because the Eagles have plenty of depth at offensive line right now. This is a guy that I've seen mock drafts have first, second, and third round grades on. He's a run-first guard and played all the positions on the offensive line, which Evan said earlier is something the Eagles look for. So that's the one big side with Dorian Johnson.
Well, John, I'm not big on Dorian Johnson at all. I think he plays too high. He'll stand straight up. I like guards who play with a smaller center of gravity. That being said, I do like his size. I just think he needs to play lower. He is a capable run blocker. I have that written down, but he does have a tendency to stop his feet after making contact. He really doesn't finish off plays and block with his feet chopping through the whistle. I remember that was something I was taught when I was playing football in middle school and throughout high school, that you block and you keep driving your feet in that run game, not until you hear the whistle, until the whistle stops through the whistle. He doesn't do that a lot. He stops his feet, and he doesn't get a great push just in general. You think this he gets, I know, for his size, and people talk about him being a little bit more of a mauler physical guy. I don't see him getting great push from time to time. To be entirely honest with you, I'm not big on Dorian Johnson. I'm just not. So luckily the Eagles don't have to worry about it with the signings they just had. So we'll move on. But long story short, I'm happy we're not getting Dorian Johnson.
David Sharp, another guard, Florida, 6'5", 357. That's what stands out when you see this guy. He's projected a third-round or fourth-round pick. I mean, that's really all you need to know about this dude. He's not – obviously there's a lot of potential with 6'5", 357, but with that size and you're not a first- or second-round pick, that tells you all you need to know about him. He can clog up defenders, but he doesn't have the best movement, but teams are going to take a chance on 6'5", 350 all day.
Oh, yeah, John. And the funny thing about this is, you know, I generally have arguments with my friends about what kind of offensive lineman I like. You know, I've said that before, and I really like the guys that are about this size. You know, 6'5", 3 something. You know, that's the kind of tackle guard hybrid that I do generally like, and that's the kind of offensive line size that the Eagles have had most of their success with the bigger offensive linemen. We actually had a whole segment on this when we were just doing our regular initial podcast last spring. So I'm not going to talk too much about it. But again, it's really almost a moot point. I don't want to waste people's time talking about this guy because, you know, with all the interior offensive line moves the Eagles have made, there's just no way they're going to spend a high or mid-round pick on an interior offensive lineman.
And we're going to round it up with Artavis Scott, number 2 wide receiver out of Clemson, 5'10", 190. Now, I will say this about wide receivers. The Eagles are going to have 5 wide receivers probably. Alshon Jeffery's a lock. This is where it gets interesting. Torrey Smith will be a lock for a year. Nelson Aguilar is a lock for a year. That's 3 receivers that are locks. Dorial Green-Beckham, there's the guy that's probably going to get cut. Now, Jordan Matthews, like Evan and I have said the past couple of weeks, the trade talks have died, but there were trade talks in the past. So I don't think talking about Artavis Scott, who's projected as a 3rd to a 5th round pick, is that outrageous because right now I only see 3 wide receivers as locks to be Eagles opening day.
Well, John, I think Alshon Jeffery makes a team. I do ultimately think Torrey Smith will make the team. I do think Jordan Matthews will be around. And they're not going to cut Nelson Aguilar until next year when it makes more sense with the cap. You know, they'll have to eat a lot more dead money if they cut him now than next year. So he will be around. In my mind, John, I think the Eagles will take something like 6 receivers. And I do think that 2 of those guys will be drafted. Artavis Scott, I really like him a lot, John. He has good burst and acceleration. He's more physical than he appears. He's definitely an NFL elite athlete. He navigates blocks well. He does a good job in the open field with that, be it on bubble screens or just in general. After he makes an initial move or 2, he does navigate blocks almost like a running back. And he adjusts to the ball very well in the open field on those types of jump balls. So I really like Artavis Scott. He would be a great mid-round wide receiver, where in my mind, I know they're not going to take a wide receiver in the 1st round, but I think in the 4th round, this would be a great spot to grab a wide receiver. And Artavis Scott is one of those guys that I really do like, right up there with Darbo and a couple of other guys that we've talked about in previous weeks.
I think what Eagle fans have to remember when we're talking about the 5th wide receiver on the team, because you're going to have Aguilar. Evan says, okay, we can stop with the Matthews talk. Torrey Smith and Alshon Jeffery, that fifth wide receiver is also going to have to play special teams. Dorial Green-Beckham doesn't do that. So that's what's going to make him the odd man out. So when we're looking at these third, fourth, fifth, sixth round receivers, does this guy play special teams? Artavius Scott, 5'10", 190. He doesn't have that elite returner speed, but he is dangerous in the open field. Like Evan said, he reads the blocks well. He runs a lot of reverses, which is a play the Eagles have ran the past couple of years. He'll run any route, so he's very versatile, but he doesn't have that elite speed for his size. There's a lot more third-round guys I like more than Artavius Scott, because now I'm going to have to look back at all the mid-round receivers we've graded so far, and I'm going to have to look back, okay, was this guy a third, or was this guy a special teams player? Because that's going to ultimately come down to, are they going to keep him or not?
Oh, absolutely, John. To be entirely honest with you, that's what I mean. That's the exact. Do you remember a player actually on the Philadelphia Eagles from a couple of years ago, Rock Carmichael?
Yep.
He was a dime defensive back, and there was a couple injuries. I think the playoff game where the Eagles lost to the Saints, he got thrown on the field, and everybody's like, "Why is this guy even on the team? You know, he can't cover this or that." Well, John, you hit the nail on the head. Once you get to the fourth, fifth, and sixth guys in terms of wide receivers and defensive backs, they are more on the field first to be special teams guys and second to be depth guys. Because in the NFL, you know, there's only 53 guys on a roster. There's only 47 guys active at any one time, somewhere like 47 guys. So you really need almost pretty much everybody besides the quarterbacks are going to play something, be it offense, defense, or special teams. And this is where we're talking about with the fifth and the sixth receivers. I think Artavius Scott can bring that to the Philadelphia Eagles. So I really do like him.
And one thing I'm going to bring up is next player we're going to talk about is Curtis Samuel, 5'11", 196, wide receiver / running back out of Ohio State, projected as a second or third round. I have to grab my computer charger real quick because my computer's about to die. So, Evan, I'm going to let you talk about him while I grab my charger.
All right. It looks like the inmates are running the asylum, people. I am doing this by myself. Hopefully I don't get in too much trouble, but Curtis Samuel is a very strong running back / wide receiver. I really like him. Like I've said before, guys, there are two main criteria that I'm going to judge running backs on, and that's navigation. How well can you navigate blocks, and how well can you create something when the blocks aren't there, be it in when he first touches the ball or in the open field. So he has that ability to do both those things. When we first started talking about Curtis Samuel, we were talking about this guy purely as a running back, but the more I saw him, they were putting him in the slot. They were splitting him out like receivers, or like a receiver. He runs pretty good routes. He's explosive, and he has good acceleration in the open field, good agility and vision. He's also a patient one-cut runner. They use him a lot in the in stretch run plays where the offensive line are all going to down block. He's going to run more horizontally than vertically and look for cutback lanes. He has that ability. He can do that very well, to be entirely honest with you. So I do like Curtis Samuel very much. I don't know where he gets drafted. In my mind, his NFL comparison to me is Josh Huff. He was a little bit more.
Oh, that's scary.
Well, John, again, the issue is I don't like where you said Curtis Samuel could be drafted. I think he's better as a late draft pick, John. When you're talking about somebody who's a kind of a good running back and wide receiver, when you're kind of good at multiple things, you're not really good at anything. I've said that before. I believe that might be the case with Curtis Samuel. But he's a good NFL athlete. I think he can stick around for a couple of years, and I think he's a good utility guy. It's funny, for his size, Ohio State actually ran him a lot in the goal line around the red zone area. So he has a natural nose for the football, or the end zone, excuse me. And that's all good. So my issue with him is, what position does he play at the NFL level? I kind of actually see him more as a wide receiver than a running back at the next level. So in my mind, I see him as a Josh Huff.
Yeah, I say stay away from him at all costs. Like you said, not a wide receiver, not a running back. He's a little bit of both. Second or third round projection? Nope. Not spending a second or third round pick on that. He has the big play threat. He's got the elite speed, but The Josh Huff comparison doesn't have a position. I'm staying away from him at all costs.
Well, hopefully we won't have to deal with it, John. There's a good chance he won't be here anyway.
But I'm gonna just preview who we're gonna talk about next weekend. If you have any opinions of what you thought about the players we talked about today, or any prospects you want us to talk about, just leave us a comment below. And remember, share this on Facebook, share this on Twitter, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just try to interact with us as much as possible, because the more interaction, the better. We want to hear from you. We just don't want this to be Football Talk with Jon and Evan. Even though that's the title, we want to hear from the listeners. We want to hear from the viewers, because you guys got good takes too, and we want to hear those takes. So share on Facebook, tweet it out, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And the players we're going to be talking about next week in the draft, Sidney Jones, the Washington cornerback. This is the corner that a lot of mock drafts had the Eagles taking him at 14, but all of a sudden he got injured.
Got hurt.
So me and Evan are going to talk about where do you take him now. We're obviously going to break his tape because this is a first-round talent that's not going to go in the first round. We're also going to talk about Cooper Kupp, the wide receiver out of Eastern Washington, who scouts have just fallen in love with. I mean, this is a player the last couple months scouts and media has just fallen in love with. We're also going to talk about Rasul Douglas, the corner out of West Virginia, 6'1", 208. We're going to talk about Chris Godwin, the wide receiver out of Penn State. A lot of Penn State fans out there like this kid. And we're going to talk about Marquez White, the cornerback out of Florida State. So we're talking about three corners, which obviously is the number one need right now for the Philadelphia Eagles. So we're going to be talking about corner draft prospects next week.
I'm really excited, John. I think we're going to really get into the bulk of what we still need in the draft. I know John said that this list was made before the free agent signings, obviously. So now we'll have an opportunity really talking about corners to talk about, what the position that the Eagles still need after this initial wave of free agent signings. So I think it'll be very interesting. Stay tuned.
And the thing is, we're going to have – I made this list because I was estimating how long we have until the NFL draft. If me and Evan see guards on the list, we'll maybe say, okay, we're not going to talk about guards, and we'll add a running back or a corner to the list. And if there's a prospect we haven't talked about the first couple of weeks, let us know. And me and Evan will scout them. We'll grade them. So let us know who you want us to review. And Evan, it's time for your favorite segment of the week, your jersey of the week. What's the jersey you're showing off today?
Well, John, you were pretty upset last week that I didn't pick a Philadelphia, jersey. But believe me, John, with every inch in my being, I wanted to do it again just to annoy you. But you know what? It is a Philadelphia Eagles podcast, and I'm aware of that. I know that our fans are Philadelphia sports fans. So I went with another Mitchell and Ness jersey, a fan favorite jersey. This is a Mitchell and Ness Ryan Dalton rookie authentic jersey.
That's the best one you've done so far. That's my favorite.
If you notice, John, there are a number of differences between this jersey and the jersey that the Eagles wear today.
The Eagles are slanted.
Well, the Eagle slanted. The cuff is the current cuff or trim, is black. This is green, and there's no silver in the outline of the numbers. So this is from 1996. They got rid of this jersey after 1996 and moved on to a more similar, more in tune with what they do now. There's still some changes, but this is the 1996 Brian Dawkins rookie jersey. And this is your jersey of the week. John, what do you have for your
That's been the best one you've done so far.
Yeah, whatever.
That's been my favorite.
The Vancouver Grizzlies jersey was better, but John just won't give me any love.
Now, my memorabilia of the week, I've shared, every Christmas, I am guaranteed to get gifts from my father, which I love, of the Phillies, the Eagles, the 76ers, and Flyers. But the thing is, there's some years where my dad can't get me a jersey because there's been years where there hasn't been any good players for my dad to get me a jersey of. So one year, he got me an Eagles stocking, an Eagles Christmas stocking. So what better way to have holiday spirit than to have an Eagles stocking? So that is my memorabilia of the week.
John, That is awesome. I don't know what else to say. John has the spirit of Christmas in his heart 12 months out of the year because of that stocking.
Hey, remember, people said I would make a better Santa Claus than you in high school, so.
That is true. That was also baloney. I would make such a better Santa Claus than John Jankow. I'm so much.
You are a lot more jolly than me. I'm a hater.
I'm so much more jolly than you, John. But
yeah,
anyway,
I'll admit that. I'm much more of a hater than you. I mean, every year you say the Eagles are going to go 14-2.
No, I don't. No, I don't. I'm an optimist, but I like to also think I'm realistic as well, John. So you know what? You're just jealous because every year that stocking is filled with coal, and I'm getting gifts from Santa. You know, going on a sleigh ride with and John's just getting coal from Santa.
Well, I'll just give you a little insight. If Evan predicts the Eagles are going to go 10-6, I'm predicting they're going to go 6-10, and the team finishes 8-8. So when we make our
always say I'm an optimist. I've got other friends that say I'm an Eagles pessimist. I just tell it like it is, and people are going to spin it however they want.
All right, guys, we're going to wrap this episode up. Remember, share this on Facebook, comment on Facebook, tweet it out. Tweet out your opinion along with the link to this video. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Comment with your takes. We want to hear your takes about NFL free agency. We want to hear your takes about the college football draft prospects. We want to hear your takes about what the Eagles are doing. We want to hear from you. So let us know. Evan, what do you have to say about the people getting the word out there?
You know what, guys? You know, we could use all the help we can find. So please do everything you can. Share it if you like it. If you don't, just don't badmouth us. For the most part, you know, this is a hobby for us, but we'd like this to be something more down the line. You know, hopefully we can continue to get more views. We know in the off season it's a little difficult. Obviously, we couldn't be any farther away from the NFL season, but we're appreciative to get as many views as we have been getting. Shout out to Matt Farley, who has become almost our super fan, if you will. Shout out to Blaze Dykes. You know, he's been a fan of ours since high school. You know, we've had a number of people who've been very supportive of us, and you know, I'm very appreciative of that. And I'm
going to give a shout out to Tennessee. Tennessee gave us 10 views last week. I don't know who's watching us in Tennessee, but shout out to everyone out in Tennessee.
Yeah, you know, I guess we're getting a cult following everywhere. So you know what? You know what I like to see, John? I want to see us starting to make football talk with Jon and Evan T-shirts with just John's face on the T-shirt, and it just says football talk, and on the back it says stats are for losers.
Now, is it pre-shaved head or my head now?
Ooh, how about on the front it's John's pre-shaved head, and on the back it's the post-shaved head?
Now, are we going with like my homecoming 9th grade curls, or are we going like recent?
You know what, John? I think we're going to have to consult with a fashion person on that. A fashion.
Yeah, I know nothing about fashion, so.
Yeah. Well, you look good today, John.
That's all we got for this week's episode. But that's all we got for this week's episode. Evan, I'll catch you next week, man.
John, it's a pleasure as always, buddy. Go Birds.
Go green, but more importantly, go Flashes.